Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
My name is Henry Weston. I'm 36 years old and have been married for 16 years to my high school sweetheart, Jenny. We have a 14-year-old daughter named Juliana. I stand about 6 feet tall and weigh about 200 pounds. It's mostly muscle, thanks to 18 years as a commercial and residential electrician. School was never my strong point. Sure, I graduated from high school, but my real skill was working with my hands. I had trouble sitting still in class, so I often got into trouble for disturbing others. I wanted to do something, not sit quietly and listen. Right after leaving school, I got a job as an apprentice electrician with a local contractor. 4 years later, I easily passed the master's exam, and 2 years later, at the age of 24, I received a master's license. I consider myself a smart guy, but I just don't like book learning. I wanted to start my own business after getting my craftsman's license, but Jenny wasn't comfortable with the risk. We had a young daughter, and Jenny was a stay-at-home mom who really enjoyed having a steady income to rely on. So I continued to work for Alpha Electrical Contractors. I made good money. We were able to buy a house. Each of us had a car. Everything was already paid for. We could afford vacations, pay all our bills without worries, and even had money left over for fun. We were not rich, but we lived comfortably, happily, and in love. Well, I certainly am. My best friend growing up was Tom. We met in 3rd grade at Mrs. Fran Collins's class when his family moved into a house down the street, and we were practically inseparable from then on. We played sports together, went on double dates, and even got jobs at the same fast food restaurant in high school. Tom was rather book smart, while I was pulling cables and bending pipes as an apprentice electrician. He was finishing his business degree at Stanford while I was working toward my master's license. He was getting his MBA while I was working on mine. He had a great job, although he worked long hours and made a lot more money than I did. But he was lonely, so he spent a lot of time with Jenny and me. We tried to arrange dates for him, but nothing came of it. He came to dinner several times a week and often said how jealous he was of my family. Money can buy many things, he said, but it cannot buy the love of family. I agreed with him every time. I loved my wife, and my daughter was everything to me. We were very close. I told her a lot about my work, even though I had much higher hopes and dreams for her. But as I reasoned, knowing something about repairing electrical appliances never hurts. My world came crashing down in August. I came home from work and saw Tom's car in the driveway. This was not unusual because, as I said, he often came over for dinner and was sometimes home before me. Usually when I entered the house, Juliana was the first to greet me. She heard my truck pull up and always made sure to meet me at the door. It didn't happen every day, but it happened often enough that when I walked in and she wasn't there, I asked Jenny where she was. "Danielle has her," Jenny replied. I noticed her face. Tom sat behind her on the sofa, and his expression was the same. Something was definitely wrong. "What's going on?" I asked. Then Jenny said the 4 words every man dreads hearing from his wife: "We need to talk." Having just returned home from working outside in mid-August, I was pretty dirty. "Okay, do you mind if I take a shower first?" Jenny nodded, so I headed to the bedroom and took a long shower. I considered my options. Could she be pregnant again? We hadn't talked about kids in a while, and we'd actually had a lot of conversations about what we might do once Jules leaves home. We hadn't had liaison for a few weeks. Something always got in the way, or she just felt bad when I tried to start. But it had been no more than 6 to 8 weeks, so the math added up. If she accidentally got pregnant, it would definitely be a concern. Although I hoped she knew I would be happy to accept another child, why was Tom here for this? Maybe she told him first to see how he thought I would react. Maybe someone is seriously ill. I had no family. All my grandparents were gone. My father died when I was 11, and my mother died about 10 years later. They divorced when I was young due to my mother's infidelity and my father's inability to deal with it. When she finally left, Dad died in a car accident, crashing face first into a tree. He was completely sober, and there were no brake marks on the road. I realized later what this meant, but perhaps Jenny's parents or her younger sister Liz had problems. I assumed it might have been Jenny or Tom, but I thought I would have known about it sooner. Obviously, these were just guesses, and there was nothing left to do but go down and find out what it was all about. I got dressed and joined them in the living room. Thinking back, I should have caught the hint that they were sitting next to each other on the sofa while I was sitting alone in the armchair. But it didn't occur to me at the time. "Henry, you are a one-of-a-kind man, and have been a faithful husband and a hard worker for so long," Jenny began. "It wasn't the best start. There's no real easy way to say it, but Henry, Tom and I have fallen in love. I'm sorry, but I'm asking for a divorce." If I had ever imagined what it would be like to be hit in the chest with a brick, what I felt at that moment would be pretty close to that. I was stunned, and the words got stuck in my throat, so Jenny kept talking. "I hope we can do this peacefully. We would like to stay here so Juliana can continue to attend the same school. I don't want to interfere with her life any more than is absolutely necessary, but we just can't continue the way we were." I found the strength to speak. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked with difficulty. She smiled a crooked smile, and her answer was like a knife in my back. "Of course, Henry." I was still trying to recover from the blow to my soul I had just received. I always thought that we were happy together. Of course we had problems like all couples, but nothing that could cause a breakup. My mind was spinning as I tried to remember what I could do to get her into the arms of another man. We had over 20 years together, more than half of our lives. There must have been something, but I didn't remember anything. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. Tom's attempt to get a word in edgewise finally brought my voice back. "Henry, listen." "No," I roared, a voice even I didn't recognize. "You no longer have the right to contact me. Consider this a warning, Tom. If you say one word in my direction, I will kill you and be happy to spend the rest of my life in prison for it. Nod if you understand." He nodded. Tom was in a suit, and not particularly muscular. I could break him like a match if I wanted to, and he knew it. "You don't have to act like that," Jenny intervened. "Let's try to stay calm, please." "I am trying to behave as calmly as possible. I am the one who has been betrayed and trampled upon, so screw you and your opinions on how I should react," I blurted back at her. "And I'll take custody of my little girl, not you." "Henry, I understand you're upset, but I won't give up custody of Juliana," Jenny said. "We can agree on a fair visiting schedule so you can spend plenty of time with her, but she will stay with us to keep her life as normal as possible. You work long hours, and I will still be a housewife." To hell with this. God, how eloquent I am. You don't understand anything. Damn it. She is also my daughter. I didn't spend the last 18 years working like a horse to support my family so I could become a part-time dad, because the cheater I married decided to climb the social ladder to someone with a bigger bank account. I guess this explains why none of the women ever settled down. He apparently had his sights set on you from the very beginning. "It's not about the money, Henry," she countered. "The thing is, we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. I thought I loved you so much, but we were just children. I married you because we were together for so long and everyone expected it of us. I tried to be a loving wife to you, but as I grew older, I realized there was something more for me, and I found it with Tom. We didn't want it to turn out like this. He was just always there and we got along. Honestly, we were surprised you never noticed how well we get along." I realized they were now holding hands. "I noticed," I said. "I just trusted my wife and my best friend. Paradoxically, it never occurred to me that two of the three most important people to me would stab me in the back. It's bad enough that you did this to me. If you fight me for custody, the gloves are off." "Clear. Then, I guess the gloves are coming off," Jenny said. "I'm sorry you think it has to be like this. It could be a lot easier." "Anything." I said, "I'm sorry that I'm making your complete betrayal more difficult than you'd like. You two, get out of here. I will not leave the house that I paid for every day because you decided that I was no longer good for you. I'm sure the gentleman with a lot of money will have a place for you to stay." "Okay," Jenny said. "I already have a few things at his house. It hurts. I'll just grab a few more things and then we'll leave." "Anyway, Henry, I'm sorry they had already left when I muttered, 'None of what you say is worth a penny.'" Obviously, I sat in silence on the couch, staring into space. I heard them moving around in the bedroom for about 30 minutes. Then Tom took the suitcase outside and loaded it into the car. A moment later, Jenny came out of the bedroom. She stopped and turned to me before walking out the door. She was about to say something, then changed her mind and left without a word. When Juliana returned home later that day, I explained to her what had happened, being careful not to use any derogatory words about her mother or Uncle Tom. I didn't want to seem like someone who was trying to ruin her relationship with her mother. Perhaps, looking back, I should have, but I tried to make it as easy as possible for her, and I had complete trust in my relationship with my daughter. It probably didn't matter in this state. A child aged 14 or older has a significant say in who he or she wants to live with, as long as both parents are considered fit. Unfortunately, being a lying cheater does not, in itself, make you an unfit parent. But I was confident in Juliana's love for me, and that she would choose to stay with old Dad. I hired a lawyer on Monday and made it clear that I wanted to go all the way. He said he would do his best, but the state laws were against me. I'd probably have to pay alimony, at least until she marries the jerk, which I expected to happen soon, so it probably wouldn't be too bad. Child support would of course depend on where Juliana ended up, so I was sure there wouldn't be any. All documents were submitted, and 3 weeks later we had a hearing. Jenny waived all claims for alimony since Tom already had a higher income and they were going to get married immediately after the divorce was finalized. Perhaps she hoped that this would make it easier to achieve some level of civil relations. She was wrong. I sat with my lawyer and looked straight ahead, never once looking in her direction. I don't know if she was looking at me. Obviously, we sat quietly until the judge spoke with Juliana in his office for almost an hour. I watched as she walked out and down the back hallway, sitting through a side door, followed by a female sheriff. She was clearly crying. She probably felt sorry for how her mother would feel when she chose me. This warmed me up a little to the idea. Finally, the judge returned and announced his decision. The petition for divorce is granted and will become final in 120 days, as established by state law. As previously mentioned, Mrs. Jennifer Weston waives all claims to alimony as well as any marital financial assets in the form of cash. Therefore, no alimony will be awarded, and all cash assets are awarded to Mr. Henry Weston. All in all, it was going pretty well, I thought to myself. Our cash reserve wasn't huge, but it was nice to have. She definitely didn't need it. Tom had a lot more money than I did. The judge continued, so the last issue before the court is custody of the minor child, Juliana Olivia Weston. I've spent the last hour talking to Miss Weston. Let me emphasize that this is a very difficult situation for a child, essentially having to choose between parents. And her choice was made only after careful consideration of all possible consequences. At her request, I make the following determination, Mrs. Jennifer Weston will have custody of the minor Juliana, as well as title to the home, so that Juliana can continue her education in the same school district and environment. What the hell, I thought. She chose her over me. She didn't seem to love me as much as I thought. It seems like I completely misunderstood my entire family, including Tom. I was naive and stupid to think that they actually loved and cared about me. It was like my parents' story all over again. I was just someone who could be dealt with, someone who could be used to achieve their goals, a source of funds and nothing more. And now they had a better source. The judge kept saying something about justice, alimony, visitation, and so on, but I didn't hear anything, and it really didn't matter anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I heard my lawyer trying to whisper soothing words to me, but it sounded like blah blah blah. I was finally brought back to reality with a hammer blow. I wandered along the corridor in a fog. I barely realized that Juliana hugged me and whispered, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," with tears in her eyes, but I didn't have the strength to do anything. My betrayal by the only 3 people who mattered to me, indeed, the only 3 people in my life, was complete. I had no one left. Jenny walked up behind Juliana with pity in her eyes, while Tom wisely kept his distance. "As I promised, Henry, we'll try to get you to see her as often as possible, but I really think it's in her best interest. I guess you win and I lose." "I'll be gone by the end of the week," I said, thinking I meant leaving home. "Take your time, Henry. This will take time. We can stay in the condominium as long as necessary. I really hope we can get past this and learn to get along. You still mean a lot to me." I turned and looked at her. This time there was a sharp edge to my voice. "Don't feed me your crap. If I meant anything to you, this wouldn't have happened. Like I said, I'll be leaving by the end of the week. Take your daughter and leave me alone." "She's our daughter," Jenny said. "She'll see you next weekend." It came out almost like a growl. No, she made her choice. She chose you. Goodbye, Jennifer. I left without looking back. Tom put his 2-bedroom apartment up for sale immediately after the hearing and expected to sell it fairly quickly. It was a high-demand location, and he priced it to sell quickly. He'd already packed most of his things, ready to move into the house he used to share with Henry as soon as Henry notified the court that he had completely vacated. Keeping Juliana's life as normal as possible was our priority, and Tom's apartment was in a different school district. We certainly didn't want this to happen. We fell in love despite our attempts to stop it. We didn't want to hurt Henry, but we just couldn't deny our feelings. Fate seemed to intervene, allowing us to be together. For the first time, Henry had been called away on a business trip for an emergency job that would take all night, which was rare. Juliana had asked for permission to sleep over with Danielle that same night. I spent the night with Tom at his apartment, and it was everything we had dreamed of. I knew deep down that we were made for each other. We met 2 more times over the next 2 weeks before finally telling Henry. Each time I felt more for Henry than ever. It was very difficult for me to refuse him during these 2 weeks, but my loyalty now belonged to Tom. We knew Henry would be hurt and upset, but we believed he would eventually recover. We could never have predicted what would actually happen. Henry and I had not spoken since the hearing. He told us that all communication must go through his lawyer. We sent his lawyer a message to pick up Juliana from the apartment on Friday at 4 p.m. It was now 4:30 p.m., and he still wasn't there. Finally, I tried to reach him on his cell phone but found that it was disconnected. I was unable to contact his lawyer but left another message. He may have lost track of time and the day, I told Tom. I'll just take her there. Henry usually didn't lose track of such things. His job required him to be very organized. But with everything that was going on, it was understandable if it had escaped his notice just this once. Juliana and I pulled up to the house, and it seemed like no one had been there in days. We went inside and found the house almost empty. All of Henry's belongings were gone, as were the belongings in the main part of the house. Juliana's room was still full, and there were some of my things that I hadn't picked up. I noticed a piece of paper on the table. I picked it up and saw that it was a cash receipt. Attached to it was a note explaining that this was the full amount of alimony for Henry until Juliana graduated from high school, as required by the terms of the divorce. Someone knocked on the door, and I turned around, thinking it was Henry, but it was Mrs. Perrin from next door. He hasn't been here for several days. He took all the things out onto the lawn, and the next day a Salvation Army van came to pick them up. I think it was the day after your divorce, Mrs. Perrin said. Did he leave you any contact information? I asked. His phone is switched off, and we have no other way to contact him. Juliana, darling, could you come out for a minute, Mrs. Perrin asked as she walked further into the kitchen. Next to me, we waited until she came out. I didn't want to say it in front of her. Jenny, but he left me a message for you. I felt a sudden sense of foreboding. I was bracing myself for this to be bad news. Okay, what's the message? He said that the next time I see you, if you ask where he is, I should say that he will see you in hell. Pardon my language, and I'm so sorry, darling, for everything that happened. Tears rolled down my face. He left. He paid his child support in advance, gave away everything he couldn't carry, turned off his phone, and left. He left his daughter without a word. He said he would leave, but I assumed he meant out of the house, not out of our lives. He called Juliana your daughter, but I thought it was said in a fit of passion. Mrs. Perrin left, and Juliana returned to the house. She saw tears streaming down my face. What happened, Mom? I had no other answer. Any hope that it was a mistake or that everything would be okay was gone. I felt like I had to be completely honest. He's gone, honey. I'm sorry. Juliana flared with anger. You did it. You kicked him out by sleeping with his best friend and leaving him. My father left, and it's all because of you. She burst into tears. I hugged her and held my sobbing daughter close to me. I'm sorry, honey. I never thought this would happen, but things couldn't continue the way they were. I wish things were different, but there was no easy way to do it. We collapsed on the floor of the empty kitchen, sobbing in each other's arms for what seemed like hours, but in reality it was about 10 minutes, until we finally managed to pull ourselves together. We drove back to the condo in silence, and Juliana immediately went to her room and slammed the door, bursting into tears again. What happened? Tom asked. He left, I answered. He sold everything in the house, turned off his phone, left a check for the full amount of his child support. I showed him the receipt. He told our neighbor if we asked where he was, she'd say she'd see us in hell. Tom, I'm scared. What if he does something stupid? We sat on the sofa, and I leaned on Tom's shoulder. I just couldn't believe what was happening, Tom said. I never would have believed he would react like that. He was always the one who could handle a crisis. When the two of us did something stupid and broke bottles outside the school one night and the cops showed up, we all ran away, but there was no chance of getting away. Everyone was gone. But he calmly took the risk so the others could leave. We asked him the next day why he did it, and he said it was the only way. They needed to catch someone, and as soon as they did, he hoped they would stop looking for the others. He considered himself the most logical choice since he already had a criminal record. He sacrificed himself for us. It was quite logical for him. I knew that he would be hurt, but he was Tom said. I'm sure he will understand that it makes sense, and we will somehow move on. Now we can't do anything until he shows up. The good thing about being an electrician is that there will always be work, no matter where you are. It's a little harder to keep yourself off the grid so no one can track you. I canceled all my credit cards and paid for everything in cash. I lived 3 states away from where they probably thought I went. I was able to find a local contractor who agreed to pay me cash in exchange for a slightly lower hourly rate than I deserved. Since I didn't really need the money and wanted to work, I agreed. Are you on the run? He asked me. Not really, I replied. Not from the law or anything like that. I just don't want to be found. It's normal, he said. I also have an ex-wife. I smiled at this. I slept in my car and found a local gas station nearby where I could shower and shave. I had money for a room but didn't want to leave my name on anything. They probably weren't looking after all. They had already demonstrated that they didn't care about me, especially after they received their ransom, i.e., alimony. But you never know. With the onset of cold weather, I needed something more insulated. I found an advertisement for a room for rent. The owner of the mobile home, an elderly woman, told me to just call her Miss Ruth. I asked if we could do without a formal lease. She was a wise woman and understood that I had my reasons. I do not need money. I have plenty of that. I just need some company and some help improving this place. How about you just stay here unofficially in exchange for help around the house and company for 4 or 5 nights a week? It was a good offer, and I agreed. The divorce was finalized in mid-January, and about a week after that was Juliana's birthday, her 15th birthday. She hoped that her father would send something, but the day passed, and nothing arrived. I was heartbroken to hear her cry into her pillow. Later I walked into Tom and my bedroom, which of course used to be the bedroom I shared with Henry. He read, which he did regularly. I really thought she would get something from him, even if he sent it through his lawyer to us. I really thought he would send something. Hey, can he really give up on her completely, just because she chose to live with us? I asked. That surprises me too, Tom replied. Obviously we underestimated how much it hurt him. But we can't let this ruin our life together, honey. Otherwise, none of this would make sense. We should try to be happy and just deal with Henry when and if he decides to re-enter our lives. But perhaps you should consider having Juliana see a psychologist. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Since it seems like you won't be coming back, we will need to help her accept this. I had been living with Mrs. Ruth for almost 3 years, just going to work and coming home. I was actually at home with her almost every evening. I had no interest in going out, and I certainly had no interest in meeting women. It was January, and less than 2 months later, I celebrated, albeit half-heartedly, my 40th birthday. Although I tried to push my past life out of my consciousness, it still returned to my thoughts from time to time. I knew that my ex-wife was also turning 40 in a few months. She married Tom 2 months after their divorce was finalized, so their 3-year anniversary was approaching. I was following the wedding announcements in the online version of the local newspaper and got blind drunk the day I saw this ad. I also knew that my ex-daughter-in-law had turned 18 and found a new car in the driveway that we gave her. We felt comfortable giving her permission to round up a few of her friends and spend the day at the mall. For a long time now, we had not expected that anything would come from her father on her birthday, but we still continued to maintain at least some hope. But again, the day passed and nothing came. On graduation day, as I sat among the other 347 graduates of my high school, I cried quietly about what my life could have been. Mom and Dad should still be married, and they should be sitting together, waiting for me to walk across the stage. This was one of the goals we had talked about for years, and we had to share it together. Maybe it was selfish, but that's how I felt. Of course, Mom was happy once they could somehow put the pain of the separation and the disappearance of their dad behind them. They settled into a good rhythm. Mom clearly loved Tom, and vice versa, probably more than ever loved Dad. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that none of this was supposed to happen. I scanned the crowd and saw Mom and Tom. They waved to me when our eyes met. Not far away. I also saw Danielle's parents. They were very supportive during the divorce and even afterward. They tried to explain to me the pain that Dad must have felt, although they emphasized that they did not approve of his actions. They meant a lot to me, and I'm glad they were here. Even if it was really for Danielle. I continued to look around and saw several other familiar faces, but suddenly one caught my attention. He sat towards the back, wore glasses, and had quite long hair. I was confident I knew his face. I stood up to get a better look, but just as suddenly he disappeared. Perhaps it was my imagination. The next 4 years passed relatively quickly and without incident. Despite our efforts, including several visits to fertility specialists, Tom and I were unable to conceive. I really wanted to give Tom a baby, but it just wasn't meant to be. However, we remained very much in love, and were happy with our choice to be together. We of course regretted some of the consequences, but they could not be completely avoided. Juliana was preparing to graduate from the University of California at Berkeley and planned to pursue a career in teaching. She had recently started dating a young man named Benjamin, and they seemed like a very good couple. As often happens when Juliana reached important milestones in her life, I began to think about Henry. It had been about 7 years since we last heard anything from him. We contacted his lawyer once, but he said he had no message for us and that he would contact us if anything came up. Otherwise, he couldn't tell us anything, even if he knew where Henry was. I took solace in the fact that we were never notified of his death, so I assumed he was still alive somewhere. I couldn't help but wonder what he was doing and whether he had been able to move on after the pain I caused him. Continuing to live off the grid, I now rented a room in a multi-unit building again on a cash basis, without a formal tenancy agreement, thanks to a recommendation from Mrs. Ruth. I was already 44 years old and still in great shape. Mrs. Ruth began having health problems about a year ago, and her family was forced to move her into a care facility. Her mobile home was sold to another family. I still worked for the same company and was paid in cash. Although my salary had increased, I couldn't say I was happy, but I was at peace with where my life was at, that is, until I went to Denny's for lunch. Of course, I had been here many times before, although it had been about 3 weeks since the last time. I knew the staff well. Gail, the lovely 60-something black woman who worked behind the counter and whom I had known since I got here, saw me when I walked in. She knew my story inside and out, having been an excellent communicator over the years and promising to remain discreet. She was the only person here I trusted. I was about to sit at the counter, but she stopped me. "No, Mr. Henry. Today you need to sit in that booth right there," she said, pointing to one of the booths at the front of the restaurant. Knowing that Gail always had a reason for her actions, I obediently took a seat in the second booth in the row, hoping that at some point she would explain her demand. It soon became clear what she was up to when a waitress I had not seen before approached my table. She was tall, slender, blonde coincidentally or not, the exact opposite of short, brunette, and curvy Jenny, and beautiful. She had a wonderful smile. Her badge said Kelly. "Good morning," she said. "How are you today?" "Much better now," I replied. It was corny, I know, but she smiled like it was the sweetest thing she'd ever heard, even though it was probably the millionth time she'd heard it. I ordered my usual and waited as Kelly disappeared around the corner. I jumped up and caught up with Gail. "I know what you're up to," I said. "Okay," she replied, "or you're not as smart as I thought." Then she went about her business. Kelly checked on me several times before bringing my food and then promptly delivered my plate. I watched her interact with other customers and noticed her glancing at me several times while I was looking at her. She seemed to feel the same connection that I did, or maybe she was just afraid that I would stalk her and wanted to be able to give a good description. She approached me again. "My shift is ending, so I wanted to wish you a good day," she said. She did not emphasize saying goodbye to other clients, so it had to mean something. I decided to take the risk. "Tell me, would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" Her face lit up with a smile. "I would love it. You can pick me up here at 6. I stayed in my booth until she left. She winked at me as she passed me on the way out. I immediately walked up to the counter to talk to Gail, who I was sure lived here. "Okay, Cupid, what's her story?" I asked. Gail told me everything she knew. She's 35 and has an 8-year-old daughter named Megan. Her husband couldn't hold down a job and ran away with her best friend when Megan was just 3 years old. This sounded familiar, I thought. She moved here hoping to start over and hasn't even dated since. "I immediately thought of you. You will have a good time together, I can feel it." "Does she know you set us up?" I asked. Gail just smiled slightly. She would never tell me. I arrived at Denny's at 5:45 p.m., not wanting to be late, flowers in hand. I sat very nervously in the booth by the door and waited for her to arrive. At exactly 6, Kelly appeared behind me. She had been waiting in the back room. She was nervous and didn't want to wait in her apartment. She was wearing a white floral dress and pink high heels that almost matched her height with me. She wore just a little makeup and looked absolutely stunning, and I told her this. "Thank you very much." "That's nice of you," she said. "You look quite attractive, too." She hooked her arm through mine, and we walked the 2 blocks to Maggie's Steakhouse. I know it sounds like a romantic cliché, but Kelly's hand really felt like it belonged there. Maybe it was just because no one had been around for a long time, but I didn't feel that way. We sat at a table opposite each other. Gail said she was 35, but tonight she looked hardly older than 25. Her blonde hair was mostly down, but some of it was in a braid. I found myself in an awkward position. I wanted to know everything about her, but I didn't want to talk about what I usually call my first life in my mind. The person who lived the first 37 years of my life was not really me, or at least not the me I was now. I was sometimes asked if I had children, and my answer was always no, because as far as I was concerned, when Juliana chose her mother, she replaced me with Tom. Of course, I wish I could say that I even really believed all of this, but I knew that part of me still loved and missed her. It was just buried deep underneath all the pain and anger. To limit my exposure, I tried to keep the conversation as relevant as possible. "So, how long have you been working at Denny's?" I asked, hoping for a safe start. "Only a couple of weeks," she replied. "I've been a waitress before, and I really enjoy interacting with people. They can give me day shifts so I can work while my daughter is at school." "How old is your daughter?" I asked. I already knew the answer from Gail, but I wanted to make sure I was getting the information directly from Kelly. "She's 8, and she's the light of my life," she said. "Her name is Megan, and she is so smart and beautiful." "Do you have children?" "Crap. No, I don't have any," I said as naturally as possible. Technically, it wasn't a lie because I don't have kids. As far as I was concerned, I once had one but not anymore, at least not in this life. Do you like children? Kelly asked. Because any man who ends up in my life must be ready to become a father to Megan. This doesn't mean I'm looking for a father for her. I'm doing great on my own, but I don't want to find myself in a situation where me and my daughter are one thing, and me and my husband are another. We will be a family, and we will act like a family. Is that clear? I see, I replied. I couldn't agree more. And to answer your question, yes, I really like children. Juliana's face, the last one I remembered, suddenly appeared in my mind. As the evening went on, I admitted that I had been married and divorced before, but tried my best not to reveal too many details, explaining that I still felt a lot of anger and pain about it. This was true, but I was determined not to let it affect my future relationships, which was also true. We only had dinner, and then I offered to take her home, but she asked me to drop her off again at the restaurant. Henry, I admit I really like you, Kelly explained. I felt a connection the first time I talked to you at my table, and I still feel it tonight. But I can't let you take me home because Megan is there. My neighbor has kindly agreed to look after her when I need to work longer or go out. But I'm not yet ready for Megan to see me with someone until I'm absolutely sure. I hope you understand that. I completely understand, Kelly, I replied. You have her to take care of. I'll let you decide these things. Can we meet again tomorrow? I can't go out tomorrow night, she said. I don't want to be a burden to Mrs. Pritchett, but I work tomorrow morning and I'd really like you to come and have lunch on my shift. Can we consider this our second date? I would really like that. Maybe Gail will let me sit with you for a few minutes since she introduced us. I wasn't sure you knew about this. See you in the morning, she said. I kissed her on the cheek. I had been working hard since 7 a.m. This morning. The school has a morning program that allows me to leave until work starts, and it was a very busy morning. But I immediately felt it when Henry walked through the door at about 7:45. I felt it before I saw him. All my tables were occupied, so he sat at the counter with Gail until one was free and immediately took it as soon as it was cleared. I really wanted to spend time with him, but I was at work, and that should have been my priority. However, I was able to steal a quick 5 minutes to sit with him. He extended his arms across the table towards me, and I took both of his hands in mine. I wish I had more time to sit with you. It's okay. I know you're working, he said. When can I ask you out again? Like I said, I don't want to take advantage of Mrs. Pritchett's kindness. How about we do something in 2 evenings? I think I can bear it if only I can come to breakfast and see you in the meantime. Necessarily, I need to get back to work. Yes, I also have things to do today. See you tomorrow. I stood up and quickly kissed her on the cheek. Thank you for coming to me, it means a lot to me. We both smiled widely as I left. 2 evenings later, I picked Kelly up at Denny's again, but this time we went to a country bar and grill on the outskirts of town. We danced several times, and Kelly was often asked to dance. To my great delight, she declined all offers, making it clear that she was here with me, and that all the spots on her dance card were reserved. It reminded me that when I went dancing with Jenny, she didn't mind dancing with other guys, and I didn't mind either. But Kelly herself said no. It wasn't even discussed. I really appreciated it. I assured her that I had, although I was sure I was blushing. Hey, don't be ashamed, she continued. No one has made such an impression on me for a long time. I'm actually flattering myself a little. Kelly, you may not have noticed, but I doubt it's been a long time since you affected a man like this. You're so beautiful. She suggested I go to her place. I broke a few traffic laws on the way home, but as they say, it's not illegal unless you get caught. We were sweaty from dancing, but neither of us cared. Please be gentle, okay? I haven't done this since my husband left 5 years ago. This dear lady is both a sadness and a blessing. Sadness that such a beautiful woman has been inactive for so long, but a blessing for me that I am finally the one with whom she is now. She smiled at me. You speak well, she said. This is also a long time ago for me, so we will learn together. I refused to take her to Denny's so late. Either I would take her home, or she would stay with me. Her daughter was already asleep by then, and I wasn't ready to risk Kelly's safety. She let me take her home. We kissed for a few more minutes at her door before I reluctantly let her go. We were together for about 2 months, and Henry was patient. He came to my work almost every day, and we went out about every 3 or 4 days. Mrs. Pritchett assured me that she was happy to look after Megan at any time, but I still didn't want to abuse it too much. We also met occasionally when I was free and Megan was still at school, but it wasn't often since I tried to schedule as much work as possible while Megan was at school. We both knew that Gail had pushed us toward each other, and we both noticed how she looked at us with that "I told you so" expression. I really fell in love with him and decided it was time to take the next step in our relationship. "How do you feel about dinner at my house tomorrow?" I asked. "That would be great," he replied. "Will it be just the 2 of us?" I paused for a moment to create some tension, then smiled and said, "No, Megan will be there too, if you don't mind." "Kelly, honey, I don't just mind. I am delighted. But are you sure you're ready?" "I'm sure it's time. I think she loves plush toys." I arrived right on time, holding a small green bear in my arms. I was nervous when I knocked on her door. Megan opened the door herself. Kelly stood behind her a couple of steps away. "Good evening. You must be Megan, the lady of the house." Megan wore a light pink dress and had her hair in ponytails adorned with pink ribbons of the same color. Kelly was wearing sweatpants and a light sweater. Her hair was straightened, though it usually had natural waves. "Yes, sir, it's me. Please come in." I was impressed by her manners. "Thank you, Miss Megan. Tell me, can you help me with one problem?" I picked up the bear. "I have this friend who needs a home and someone to love him. He can't stay at my house. There is a strict rule, no bears. Could you take care of him for me?" Megan took the little bear from my hands. "I have a lot of friends he can meet. He'll love it here." She ran off to deliver her new friend to her room. "That was nice," Kelly said, giving me a quick kiss. "She loves plush toys. Her room is full of them, and they all have names. I don't know how she remembers them all." I hugged her and kissed her longer, but I was interrupted when Megan burst into the room. "These are my best friends," she announced. I was introduced to Isabel the raccoon, Susie the tiger, and Conrad the zebra. I shook everyone's hand, paw, and hoof. When the introductions were done, Kelly asked her to clear out her friends. "Conrad?" I asked. She heard the name in an ad and liked it for some reason, Kelly explained. The next friend who entered the family was named Conrad. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation was mainly conducted by an 8-year-old girl who really loved to hear her own voice. But it was wonderful to listen to her, and Juliana's face appeared in my thoughts again. This time it was the 8-year-old version of her. I felt my eyes begin to water and quickly pulled myself together, hoping Kelly didn't notice. After dinner, Kelly and I sat on the couch, talking and holding hands, while Megan played with a few of her friends, including Bobby, the newest member of her family. Suddenly, Megan stopped and looked at me. "Will you be my new daddy?" Kelly started to intervene, but I stopped her. "I'll sort it out, honey," I said, calling Megan to stand in front of me. "Megan, honey, I really like your mom, but I won't lie to you. Your mom and I are still getting to know each other, and we have a long way to go before making any decisions of this nature. Besides, I need to convince another beautiful girl, because if I ever marry your mom, in a sense I'll be marrying you too, right? So, we'll be spending a lot of time together until we decide what we want to do. Sometimes it will just be mom and me. This doesn't mean we don't want you to be with us during those moments, but sometimes adults need time alone. However, as soon as mom and I make any decisions, you'll be the first to know, I promise." "That sounds good." "I guess that's normal," Megan said. "Do you promise that I will be first?" I nodded. "Fine. Can I have some ice cream now?" Kelly stood up and poured us each a bowl of ice cream, which we ate at the table. It all reminded me of many difficult memories that I had tried to forget over the years. My eyes watered again, and this time I was sure Kelly had noticed, but neither of us said anything. It was finally time for Megan to go to bed. My heart expanded threefold when she asked me to read her a bedtime story. After a thrilling reading of Sleeping Beauty, I kissed her forehead and said good night. When Kelly and I returned to the couch, she asked about the little speech I gave to Megan about being her father. It was a great response, she said, like you practiced it. Sort of, I said. I did some research online about how to date a single mom and how to answer questions like that. I accepted their suggestions and thought about what I wanted to say when they came up. I'm glad I was able to do it well. You did great, Kelly said. I think she really likes you. I was hoping to, but it's your house and your little girl is in the hallway, so I wasn't going to push it, I replied. I really want to stay, but I'll have to ask you to leave before she wakes up. We just need to be careful. That's fine, Kelly said. In response, I took her hand and walked down the hallway to her bedroom. Trying to lock the door, I paused as memories flooded back again, memories of how I acted the same way when Juliana was little and Jenny and I needed time alone. I was reliving it all. Part of me was grateful for a second chance and the possibility of getting it right this time, but another part was afraid the outcome would be the same. I couldn't handle that again. Everything went according to plan. Kelly and I spent about 3 hours being intimate. There really are no words to describe making love to Kelly. Her skin is perfect and so soft. When we finished, she checked in with Megan and found her fast asleep and cuddling with her new bear friend Bobby. I got dressed and left, grateful that everything went so well and looking forward to spending more time with Kelly. Megan spent the night at a friend's house last night, and today I had the day off while Henry went to work. It's been 8 months since Henry and I met, and we're madly in love. Well, I'm sure, and I'm pretty sure he is too. I spent the night with him in his room, and we made love most of the night and again before he left for work. We were together almost every day during this time, and I expected him to propose any day and get an enthusiastic yes when he finally did.
I rolled out of bed to get into the shower. I slept without anything next to my man, so I didn't even have to take off my clothes. I'll hang out here until Henry picks me up for lunch, and then he'll take me home so I can be there when Abby's mom brings Megan home this afternoon. It was just boredom that made me look around Henry's room. He didn't have much stuff, and we didn't spend much time here. We were usually at my house because of Megan. This was actually only the second time I'd been here alone, and the first time lasted a full 20 minutes while he ran to the store to get milk. I could see almost everything just by standing in the center of the room. His home office with a small desk and filing cabinet, his full kitchen with a microwave and stove, a closet where he kept his clothes, and of course, a bedroom with a king-size bed, which we put to good use last night. I leafed through the things hanging in the closet. I'd already worn his shirts as nightgowns several times after he left them at my house. They always smelled like him, and I really liked inhaling that scent when I fell asleep. I happened to notice a box of files squeezed into the corner of his closet. The lid was missing, and I could see it wasn't very full. I wondered why these things weren't with the rest of his files. My curiosity got the better of me. I took a quick look and noticed that the dates went back several years before he moved to Texas. It was a time in his life that he almost refused to talk about. I knew a little, but he really didn't like discussing it. It seemed very painful to him, so I didn't press him. But this man was the one I wanted to marry, and I felt like I knew so little about him. I hesitated, wondering whether I should take this opportunity to learn more about his past. I didn't even have to make it clear that I knew it would only be for my own peace of mind. So, with a little prayer that Henry would forgive me if he ever found out, I pulled out the first folder I found. It contained his marriage certificate, which didn't surprise me, and his divorce decree, which was a relief to see. I think part of me was afraid that he didn't talk about his past because he was still married. I looked at the terms of the divorce and was shocked to learn that he had a daughter. Didn't he say he didn't have children? Besides, the only surprise was that he received all the cash in their accounts, custody, child support, visitation, everything seemed pretty normal. I took a closer look at the information about his daughter. Her name was Juliana, and she would be around 22 years old now, which means she was only 14 years old when they divorced. Maybe when he said he didn't have kids, he meant no little kids like Megan. Of course, I couldn't ask him about it or he'd know I was digging, but I was sure there was more to it than met the eye. On another page, I found a contact number, the number of his ex-wife, Jennifer. I quickly packed everything back and returned it to its place. Maybe Gail knew something. She had known Henry for many years. I'd start with her. I picked Kelly up for lunch, and she seemed out of sorts. Scattered is perhaps the best description. "Are you okay, hun? You seem to have something on your mind." "No, baby, I'm fine. Just a little tired." "You made me a little tired last night," she said with a smile. I didn't press further, but I wasn't completely convinced. The next morning, I came to work early to talk to Gail. "Gail, what do you know about Henry's life before he moved here?" She quickly turned to me, and a sparkle flashed in her eyes. The concern in her voice was obvious. "Why? Why do you ask?" "I accidentally found something in his apartment last night. Did you know he has a daughter? He told me he doesn't have children, and he doesn't tell me much about his past. There must be some reason why he created all this distance from his old life." "Sweetie, you need to let it go. I've known Henry for a long time. He's a good man, and he'll take care of you. But if you dig, you might not like what you find. Trust me, leave it." "So, you know something?" I asked. "Please, Gail. I love him so much. Help me." She just shook her head and said, "Let it go, honey. Just let it go." Part of me really wanted to take her advice, but the more I thought about it throughout the day, the more I realized I couldn't let it go. Henry came in for breakfast as usual, and I tried to act normal. We talked about our plans for the evening before he had to go to work. I kissed him and sent him on his way. When my shift ended, I returned home to think some more. As I sat in my apartment, I realized that I had to find out what made Henry leave his daughter. I needed to know this because I had my own daughter. She loved Henry as if he were her father, and he seemed to love her as if she were his own. If he could keep one daughter, he could do it again if the circumstances were right. Until I know what those circumstances were, I can't risk Megan's heart. I was her mother, and she was my priority, even despite my own happiness. Since Gail couldn't tell me anything and Henry had made it clear that he wouldn't either, I had only one course of action. The phone display simply showed closed number. I started answering calls from unknown or blocked numbers just in case it was Henry. But when I picked up the phone, I had no hope that it would be anything other than a telemarketer or similar. "Hello?" "Yes, hello. I'm trying to reach Jennifer Weston." I almost hung up. Someone calling under my old married name was almost certainly trying to sell something using outdated information, but something in the tone of the voice, the uncertainty in it, made me stop. "Well, it's me, although now I'm Holloway." "Who's calling, please?" "Mrs. Holloway, my name is Kelly. We've never met, but..." She took a deep breath. "But I'm dating your ex-husband, Henry." Did I actually hear that correctly? I just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, not believing what I'd just heard. I had thought about what I would say if this ever happened, but at that moment, I could not form a single coherent thought, let alone words. "Mrs. Holloway, sorry. Please, call me Jenny. You just caught me off guard. Give me a minute, please." I put the phone down and rubbed my face, as if waking up from a dream. I wish Tom were here. He would have known what to say or at least helped me figure it out, but he was still at work. I pulled myself together and picked up the phone again. "Kelly, sorry for the wait. It's just, I understand." "Jenny," Kelly said, "I don't know much, but I know you haven't heard from him in a while." 8 years, I replied. 8 years have passed. How is he doing? Where is he? He's fine. He's doing well, Kelly replied. Sorry, but I can't tell you where he is. I have a feeling you wouldn't be too happy about it. I'm already risking our relationship just by calling you. I did some digging to get some information he never really told me about his past. It hurt me a little that he started a new life somewhere, found a girlfriend, but still didn't acknowledge our old life. Of course, I understand. I'm glad to hear he's doing well. He's a very good man, Kelly. He didn't deserve what I did to him. If you don't mind, Jenny, what exactly did you do to him? I'm guessing he didn't tell you. Well, the short version is we were together for over 20 years and married for 16. I divorced him to marry his best friend, who he's known since 3rd grade. God, this sounds terrible when I say it out loud. Wow, my husband did the same thing to me. He divorced me from my best friend. Small world, huh? We weren't together that long, really, but that doesn't explain why he did what he did. People get divorced every day, even for reasons like yours, but they don't leave and abandon their children. There must be something else. Oh, that's right, I said. I explained the circumstances that led to Henry's departure. I don't think he saw it as abandoning his daughter because, in his mind, she rejected him at first by choosing to stay with me and Tom. In fact, right after the divorce hearing, he called her your daughter and said he would leave in a week, but I didn't understand what he meant. Well, I can't say I agree with what he did, but I can understand it a little better now, Kelly said. I really didn't want to ruin the stability, but I didn't know if I would have another chance at this. Kelly, I know you don't owe me anything, and I'm not asking for anything for myself, I said. Juliana is getting married in a few months. She has tried to move on with her life, trying to cope with the fact that she hasn't heard from her father since she was 14, not even receiving a birthday card. But as the wedding approaches, she cries all the time because her dad won't walk her down the aisle. She's been dreaming about this since she was a child. If you have any influence on him, if you can do something. Kelly didn't get mad or hang up. She considered my request and gave a measured answer, considering that she had a place in his life and that she had something to lose. I'm sure you know what you're asking, Jenny. If I even mention it, he'll probably leave me and move away again. He can get a job anywhere, and he has enough money. I don't even know how I could bring up this topic, let alone convince him to go. Of course, I understand. Maybe it's best to just let sleeping dogs lie. Kelly, thank you very much for calling. Please save my number. I would really appreciate it if you would call from time to time to let me know how he's doing. It would give me great relief. I'll save your number, Kelly said, but I can't honestly promise more than that. I hope you understand. I immediately called Tom at work to tell him what happened. Did you get a phone number from her or something we could use? No, her number was blocked, and she didn't tell me her last name. But maybe this is just the first step to something more. I ended the call, glad I made it. I learned a lot about what I wanted to know, but now the question was what, if anything, to do about it. I mean, Jenny was right, I didn't know them anything. Why would I ruin the best relationship I've ever had for their sake? But it was not for their sake, I realized, it was for me and for Megan. What would I want someone to do for me and my daughter if I were in Jenny and Juliana's shoes? I wish someone would help, if only for Megan's sake. I doubted it made much difference to Jenny in and of itself. She wanted this for her daughter. And what if, God forbid, something happened between Henry and me in the future that made things bad? Would he leave Megan to avoid pain like he did with Juliana? Or were the circumstances that forced him to leave Juliana so painful that Henry acted uncharacteristically? I remembered my own childhood, my father who cheated on my mother and left them. Of course, Henry wasn't unfaithful, but regardless of the reason, it was still a little girl who lost her daddy. And so I made perhaps the hardest decision of my life, one that may cost me the man I love. It was wrong for him to leave his daughter the way he did, regardless of her decision at the time. How could I trust Megan's heart to him otherwise? But I couldn't just ask him about it. It would be too easy for him to leave again. While Juliana was just a name from his past, he needed to see her to face what he had done and who he had left behind. The next day, after my shift, I called Jenny again. "Kelly, I definitely didn't expect you to call so soon. Does this mean something about Henry?" she asked. "Jenny, I've made a very difficult decision that I hope doesn't cost me Henry, but it has to be done. I need to ask you for two things. First, I need Juliana's phone number. Second, I'm going to tell her where he is, but I need you to swear to silence about it and not to press her. If I have a chance to continue with Henry, I cannot let you know where he is, maybe someday, but not now. Can you do it?" "Of course," Jenny replied. "My only concern is Juliana, and assuming there are some expenses involved in what you're planning, Tom and I will pay for everything." She gave me Juliana's number and then asked me to give her a few minutes to get her daughter ready before I called. I waited 15 minutes before dialing and talking to my man's daughter for the first time, and under less than ideal circumstances. "Good afternoon, this is Juliana Weston. Are you Kelly?" "Yes, it's me," I answered. "Apparently, your mother explained what was going on." "She did, and she's already stressed that anything you tell me about my father must remain a secret from her. I'm sorry that happened, but I understand and am willing to do whatever you ask. You'll need to fly to Austin International Airport, the sooner, the better. I'll meet you there and take you to your father. You'll stay with me while you're here, and I guess we'll see what happens." "Can I ask you something?" Juliana inquired. "Why are you risking your relationship for me? You don't even know me." "That's a fair question, Juliana," I said. "I was once in your shoes, and my daughter is in your shoes now, just a girl wanting her father in her life. I just feel like some things are so important. I need to know the person I hope to marry, and I need him to right the wrongs with you." Even as we spoke, Juliana booked a plane ticket to Austin for the next day. She emailed me the schedule, and I would pick her up myself. Now all that was left was to wait. "Where is Megan?" I asked. I was madly in love with this woman, more than I had ever been in love with Jenny, which I hate to admit. It gave me some insight into why Jenny made her decision, but they did it behind my back, and this discovery did not change anything in my anger and hatred towards them. As I drove Kelly back to her apartment, I almost asked. I had the ring in my pocket, and everything was ready, but I wanted it to be something more special very soon. As she closed the door, she gave me a look that was somewhere between melancholy and bitterness. I hope she was okay. After dropping Megan off at school, I headed to the airport. I waited at baggage claim with a sign with Juliana's name on it. We exchanged photos, but there were a lot of people. I kept my eye on all the women who resembled my photo, but as soon as I saw Juliana, I knew it was her. And sure enough, as soon as she saw the sign, she smiled and walked straight towards me. "You must be Kelly," she said. "I'm Juliana." "Damn, you're even more beautiful in person than in photos. I understand why Dad likes you." "It's so nice to hear that," I replied. "You yourself are very beautiful. You have your father's eyes." Juliana smiled. "Are you ready to see your father?" I was ready for 8 years. I hope everything goes at least half as well as I imagined. We piled into my little car and drove home to Marble Falls, the small town where Henry and I settled and met. As we approached the outskirts of town, I stopped and called Rosie, Henry's company dispatcher, putting the phone on speaker. "Rosie, can you tell me where Henry works now?" Of course, Kelly. Wait, Rosie replied. He's at the Bills on 4th and Main. And Kelly, he's got a couple more jobs to do today, so if you're going to do him in the back of a truck again, you better do it real quick. She chuckled as she hung up. I was too slow to end the call before this little news was broadcast. I felt myself blush as Juliana smiled knowingly at me. The back of his truck, right? Interesting, she said. I was frisky, and he looked so good, all sweaty and everything. I couldn't resist. As we approached the intersection near the department store, I pointed at Henry's truck. We'll have to wait for him to come out. I'll stand by the driver's door, and you wait a few feet behind so the truck is between you and him. We waited there for about 20 minutes before I finally heard his voice talking to the department store manager as he was leaving the store. At that point, I gave Juliana a thumbs up and waited. I fixed a short in the wiring that was causing the light in the toilet to flicker and headed for the door. I had 2 more calls to finish before I could get back to Kelly and Megan, and maybe find a good time to ask the question. I carried the ring with me, waiting for the right opportunity, although I would soon have to create such an opportunity if it did not present itself. As I rounded the corner to where my truck was parked, I noticed Kelly's car parked behind it. Then I saw her standing at the door of my truck. I felt the box with the ring in my pocket and headed towards it. Hey, baby, I called. This is a pleasant surprise. Then I saw her, the other her, and all the pain and anger flashed into my mind. Hello, Father. In an instant, I experienced a flurry of emotions, none of which were positive. I felt the pain of my family's betrayal, fear of what Juliana's presence might mean for the future, and anger at Kelly for apparently being the catalyst for it. I took a deep breath and then spoke in a tone devoid of emotion. Juliana. I turned to Kelly. I'm guessing you found the box. She nodded. I looked at my watch. Well, that was great, but I have 2 more orders for today, and I'm running out of time. I put the tools in the truck, then opened the door. Dad, I'm getting married. Yes, I answered. Congratulations. I paused, unable to suppress my inner anger. Try not to become a cheater like your mother. With these words, I climbed into the truck and slammed the door. But it didn't end there. Juliana was now standing at my window, banging on it with both fists. I saw you. I know you still love me and care about me because I saw you. She screamed to be heard through the glass, which I then lowered. What are you talking about, Juliana? My high school graduation. You were there in the back, trying not to be seen, but it was you. That's how I know you still love me. I don't know what you think you saw, Juliana, but it definitely wasn't me. I started the truck and drove off. Crap. I knew I had to get rid of these things, but I tried to be careful and keep some things just in case. And here again, my old life got in the way and came to destroy me. Obviously, once was not enough. I drove for about 10 minutes before stopping to collect my thoughts. How could Kelly do this to me? I was happy as hell. Finally, after all these years, I found love and I was happy. I should have known it wouldn't last. Happiness did not seem to be my destiny, and this was the last time I made such a mistake. It has never happened to me in my life that someone didn't betray me, so I see no reason why it should be different now. Finally, I checked out and headed to my next order. I would finish my business today and then call my boss and tell him that my past has finally caught up with me and that I will leave. He will understand. Juliana cried on my shoulder. I was completely shocked by how cold Henry was. After all, this is his own child. What she did wasn't that bad. Kids make those choices all the time, so obviously it was more about him, about the pain he felt. Henry has never been anything but loving towards Megan and me. It seems so out of character for him. I put Juliana in the car and drove back to my apartment. You will stay with me for a while. This was only the first attempt. I will talk to him again when he finishes work. I tried to console her, although I wasn't sure myself. It was already past 5 in the evening when I returned to the hostel. To my surprise, neither Kelly nor Juliana were waiting for me. As I expected, this was for the best, as it made it easier for me to leave. Damn, I really loved her and Megan. I didn't want to leave, but Kelly left me no choice. She tried to find my personal hell and brought it down on me again. Now they knew where I was, and how could I trust Kelly after what she did to me? Damn. I immediately started packing my suitcases and things. All the furniture was in the room with me, so all I had left were clothes and a few personal items. What Kelly has left will have to be lost. I ignored the knocking on the door, but when I heard it open, I knew it had to be Kelly. She had the only other key. She closed the door and just leaned against the wall, watching me for a few minutes before speaking. Are you running away again? I have no choice. Juliana now knows where I am, which probably means... Oh God. I'm guessing you were talking to Jenny. Yes. She had the only contact number in your files. Luckily, she was still using the same phone number. Yes, how convenient. My sarcasm was obvious. So I guess now you know the whole humiliating story. Great. She came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder. She told me what happened, Henry. But you have nothing to be ashamed of. The same thing happened to me, remember? But I let it go and lived my life and found happiness with you. Did the same thing happen to you? I don't think so. You haven't been together for 20 years. It wasn't the best friend you've known even longer than that. Your daughter didn't choose to leave you alone for the people who just destroyed your life. So no, it wasn't the same. My voice began to rise. Say you know me well enough. Maybe you can tell me what it is about me that makes everyone I love decide to betray and leave me. Henry, this isn't... Of course it is. First, my mother cheated on my father and left us. Then the dear old man couldn't stand it and drove himself into a nearby oak tree. So obviously, I wasn't worthy of living for him. They sent me back to the woman who left me. You can imagine how I was received there, with a new husband who never wanted children but at least needed someone to take care of the yard and bring him beer. Henry, if I wasn't fast enough on one of my chores, I'd get hit on the head or whatever he could do without leaving a mark. Eventually, he decided a few marks weren't so bad and might remind me to be faster next time. And what did Mom say when she found out what her husband was doing? She thanked him for trying to make something out of her useless child. You were interested in the scars on my back? Here you go. Answer, dear Kelly. Wait, I'm not done yet. So, I finally got out of there, built a successful career, and married the girl of my dreams. I had a close friend and a daughter whom I adored. I actually did well for a while. And what happened next? Well, you know the answer. Yes, 2 of the 3 people I lived for came together to destroy me again. 2 people I should have relied on and trusted crushed my faith in them. But even then, I tried to keep fighting. I still had my daughter, and of course, she wouldn't reject me, right? After all, her mother and good old Uncle Tom have each other, and Dad has no one in the whole world, right? She would choose to live with me to help me deal with this. We've always been close, so of course, she will. No. She smelled the same smell as everyone else and turned away from me. She chose her boyfriend over her own father. So tell me, Kelly, because maybe you've already figured it out, what is it about me that makes everyone hate me so much? I wandered around the room while shouting all this out. I looked out the window when I finished, then turned to Kelly when she spoke. Honey, Juliana doesn't hate you. She was going through probably the most traumatic thing a child can experience. She just wanted a little normalcy, to know that no matter what, she could come home and her mom would be there, as always. She relied on promises that she could see you whenever she wanted and that it would be enough for you. How would you like it if the choices you made at 14 hung over you for the rest of your life? I later realized that she made a very important point about choices at age 14, but I was too angry to let something like that get in my way at that point. Why couldn't you just leave it at that, Kelly? I was finally happy. I had you and Megan. I left it all behind for the most part. This life didn't want me anymore, so I left to create a life that wouldn't include any of them. I finally started to look forward to the future, and now you open this damn box again. These people mean nothing to you. Just tell me why. I'm very happy with you, baby, and I didn't mean to find anything, Kelly explained. But I love you, and I wanted to know more about you. When I looked in the box, I was hoping to learn something about you so that you wouldn't be such a mystery. But when I saw that you had a daughter and that you left her behind, I needed to know why. But why? Why the hell was this necessary? It occurred to me. Oh, I get it. If he's such a terrible person that he could abandon his own child, then he could definitely abandon his stepdaughter. That's what you thought, right? She lowered her head, and my answer was clear. That's just great. Okay, I'll spare you the trouble of worrying about it anymore. I'll be gone in the morning. I've already ruined enough lives with my presence. Now you can join the club. You can be friends with my daughter and join the rest of the traitors. Maybe come up with new ways to hurt me. It's a shame you won't have anyone else to push around, at least until I stop somewhere else and someone gives me away. As soon as I start to think I can finally be happy, the vultures gather around me again. I felt I had made my point sufficiently, but all I could do was make her angry. I was already happy with all this nonsense. I loved her with all my heart, but I wasn't going to let her say that and ruin our lives. So you think everyone is just spending their free time trying to ruin your life? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Your daughter gave up everything to come here because she loves you and just wants her father to walk her down the aisle at her wedding and meet his grandchildren. Your ex-wife, who you think is so hateful, just wants to make sure you're okay and find closure for her daughter. You know what, Henry? If you want to live in pain, anger, and bitterness, then it's your choice. I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I'm not going to be with someone who wants to wallow in his own pity. Bad things have happened to you, and I'm sorry this happened. You didn't deserve it. But bad things happen to many people who don't deserve it. Did I deserve my husband to leave me? No. I accepted it and decided to make the best of it, built a life with my daughter, and hope to build one with you. But it seems like all you can do is run away when things get a little difficult. Yes, I was worried that you would leave me and Megan because you had done it once before. But when I heard your story, I understood, even if I didn't agree. All of this could have been avoided if you had trusted me enough to talk to me and tell me about yourself. That's what people do when they love each other. They talk, they share everything about themselves, even what they are not proud of. I trusted you not to judge me and, more importantly, to take care of me. But that's what makes good moments so special. So take your damn key. I threw the key at him as hard as I could, hitting him right in the chest. I was a little upset that he didn't even move. Go and run away so you can find a place where you can just exist like you've been doing for 7 years, instead of living with me and Megan for the last 8 months. If that's what you want, then find it. Leave the woman who adores you and the child who loves you. But I wanted something more, and I wanted it with you. But apparently, this is just another bad thing that happened to me. I turned and walked out of his room without looking back, slamming the door as hard as I could. I felt the whole house shake from the impact, but I didn't care. I wanted him to chase me and beg me to stay because I loved him so much. But I was telling the truth when I said I wasn't going to live with someone who wallowed in anger and bitterness. I watched her walk away and slam the door behind her. Believe it or not, this was the first time I thought that I might have done something wrong. I had the right to protect myself, to isolate myself from the people who crushed my heart, didn't I? It never occurred to me that I might have lost something else. I had already admitted to myself that I didn't want to leave. I wanted Kelly and Megan, and perhaps now I could have Juliana too, at least in part. Oh, I had a lot of apologizing to do. I stopped my packing and went outside. Kelly's car had already left. I could only hope she went home. But if not, I would have stayed on her doorstep until she got home and begged her for forgiveness. When I pulled into her parking lot, her car was there, so I knew it was time. Time for me to accept whatever she would give me. I just hoped I didn't lose her. I knelt down, which wasn't as easy as before, took a deep breath, and then raised my hand to knock on the door. But before I could knock, the door swung open. Kelly leaned against the doorframe as I picked up the key she had just tossed to me. "What do you want?" she asked. "I'm sorry, Kelly. You were right and I was wrong. I love you and I love Megan. I can't lose you. I was stupid, angry, and selfish, and I don't want to be like that anymore. I'll tell you everything. What do you want to know? If you forgive me, I miss you and I want you." The silence was deafening. She looked at me while I looked at her. Finally, she reached out and took the key from my fingers. "Okay, Henry, I'll forgive you, but on one condition." She opened the door completely. "You need to make things right with Juliana." I stood up and walked through the door, stopping to take her hand and kiss her cheek. She responded by squeezing my hand and kissing me on the lips. Thank God we were okay. Juliana was sitting on the sofa. She wasn't crying anymore, but it was obvious that she had been. I knelt down in front of her and took her hands in mine. It had been so long since I had held her hands, and the feeling was both foreign and familiar. Emotions came over me instantly, and my eyes filled with tears before I even said a word. "Juliana," I began, "I'm so sorry for what an idiot I was. I was so angry and hurt about what your mom did that I couldn't see or think straight. After your mom and Tom did it, I thought that when you decided to live with them, you also betrayed me. I couldn't stay after that, so I left. I convinced myself that you didn't care because you chose them and not me. But..." "Dad," Juliana tried to interrupt, but I stopped her. "I know, baby, I know. But that's what I thought. That's how I felt. I was wrong. I understand that now. Thank you." I looked at Kelly. "Thank you, Kelly. I finally realized how wrong I was, and maybe someday I will be able to forgive myself. But today, I ask for your forgiveness with a promise to always be there for you from this day forward. May you forgive me?" "Of course I forgive you, Dad," Juliana said. "I was never mad at you. I was just sad about what happened. I know how much it hurt you. I just wish you would have talked to me first. Maybe you'd still leave, maybe you wouldn't, but at least I'd have had a chance to tell you how I feel. But I forgive you, Dad, and I hope you can forgive me for what I chose to do, live with my mother." "Honey, there's no need for forgiveness for that decision," I said. "I love you and always have. Yes, that was me at your graduation. We worked so hard to get to that point that I just couldn't miss it. I saw you recognized me. I moved to another place, but I was still there. I saw everything, and I have never been so proud in my life." Juliana and I hugged each other, trying to make up for the last 8 years of our lives. We stepped back, and I followed Juliana's gaze as she found Kelly crying quietly in the corner. Juliana extended her hand, inviting Kelly to join us in the hug, and soon we became one big group, united in tears. Finally, I walked away. "Hey, baby, where's Megan?" I asked. She's at Mrs. Pritchard's next door now." I guessed it would be emotional. "Please bring her, it's important." Kelly left and returned a minute later with Megan. Megan ran into my arms as she always did when we met. I picked her up and carried her to another room for a private conversation. "Do you remember," I said, "what I promised you about being your new daddy? That I'd be the first to know?" She replied, "Exactly. Watch this." I returned to the living room. Kelly sat next to Juliana on the couch, and they were just chatting. I stood in front of Kelly and took her hands, lifting her up. "Kelly," I said, "darling, I want to thank you for loving me enough to do for me what I couldn't or didn't want to do myself. You returned my daughter to me, even when it was completely my fault that there was such a distance between us. I know you were aware of how I might react, and you did it anyway. You cared more about what was best for me than what was best for you. If that isn't love, then I don't know what is. What you did for me only strengthened my confidence in what I was already sure about." In one motion, I pulled the ring box out of my pocket and got down on one knee. "Kelly, my love, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Kelly's eyes widened, and she immediately burst into tears. "Yes, baby, yes. Of course, I will marry you." I put the ring on her finger, and then she pulled me to my feet and hugged me. I looked at my daughters, old and new. "Looks like you girls are going to be stepsisters." "Not stepsisters," Juliana corrected me. "Just sisters." That night, I took my new family out to dinner, and we discussed wedding details. We planned to go to the district judge as soon as possible. Neither of us wanted to wait. But I started moving in with Kelly that night. I left all the furniture behind, so all I had left were clothes and personal items. Kelly and I's future plans were clear and filled with common hopes. I thought I looked pretty good in my tuxedo, but I knew that Kelly looked stunningly beautiful in her light pink dress. She was 3 months pregnant and had just begun to show. The wedding was wonderful. Juliana looked like a princess, and Benjamin, he insisted on being called Benjamin, not Ben, seemed excited to see my daughter and me walk down the aisle. He seemed like a nice guy, even though I didn't spend much time with him. But Juliana loved him, and that was the main thing. I skillfully avoided direct contact with Jenny or Tom throughout the day, although I saw them from afar a couple of times. It had not been possible to avoid them completely over the past few days due to the final preparations for the wedding, including the pre-wedding dinner. But we were so busy that there was no time to talk. Jenny and Tom had changed significantly. When Jenny was 36, at the time she left me, she still looked great in a bikini and weighed about 115 pounds. Seeing her for the first time after about 8 years, I was shocked to see that she now weighed almost 200 pounds. She said life with Tom was so good that she became fat and happy. I suspected, and at the risk of sounding petty and vindictive, I hoped that she was eating away at her guilt for what she had done to me. Kelly and I were standing together, holding hands and talking with several of Benjamin's relatives, and I didn't see them come up behind me. "Hello, Henry." Her voice, which had once been like an angel singing to me, now made me feel like my nails were scraping on a chalkboard. Was her voice always this high? I had forgiven Juliana, or rather, sought her forgiveness, but my feelings for Jenny had not improved. I realized, still for Juliana's sake, I tried to remain calm. I turned to face her. "Hi, Jennifer." I saw Tom start to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. "Tom, do you remember the last thing I told you?" "Nod if you remember." He nodded. "My feelings haven't changed." He turned to Jenny. "Honey, I'm going to go get a glass of punch. Should I bring you anything?" She shook her head in denial. Kelly intervened. "I'll join you, Tom. I need something to drink too." It was clearly a deliberate move to leave Jenny and me alone, and I followed them until they were out of sight. Once they left, we stood in silence for a moment. I could have gone forever without speaking to her again, but obviously that wasn't on the agenda. She spoke first. "I was hoping that after this amount of time, things like this wouldn't happen anymore. I guess I was wrong. Is there anything you want, Jen?" "Yes, Henry. I want us to get over this. I wish we could all be friends. Kelly is wonderful, and you get along so well together. You're going to be a dad again." "I'm already a dad again," I reminded her. I had met Megan, whom I had already started adopting at that time, and Jenny was informed about it yesterday. "Yes, of course. What I meant was that, although we've had a painful journey, we're all happier than we were before. So I was hoping that we could put the bad feelings behind us and move forward. If not as friends, then at least be friendly." "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, Jen. Do you know how much I loved you back then?" She nodded. "So I still hate you and Tom now. It hasn't gotten any easier." "But why, Henry? It's been over 8 years. I understand we could have done better, but why is it still so strong?" I'll try to explain. First of all, I don't think I ever told you that my mother cheated on my father mercilessly. She even let her lovers come into the house while Dad and I played games or something like that. Dad tried to get her to stop, but she didn't want to, so he put up with it until she left him completely and divorced him to marry one of them. Shortly after that, he committed suicide. "I didn't know that. You told me your father died of a heart attack." "Well, I found the truth a little humiliating. But that's really just background. Jenny, I loved you and was in love with you. You were everything I ever wanted, and not once did you hint that I wasn't that for you. I thought we would grow old together, enjoy our grandchildren, all that. But those dreams were crushed, and you made it clear that I was never the one you really wanted. I fit in as best I could, provided for you so you wouldn't have to work, but obviously, you were open to someone you thought was better, even if you weren't actively looking. Do you understand how insufficient I felt? I felt like I wasted my life. I'm sorry about that. It's not that I didn't love you, Henry. I did, just not like that. I couldn't help the way I felt. It's true. And if only that was all, maybe I could get over it. I've had exactly 3 people in my life who meant everything to me. I don't work in an office where I make friends among my coworkers every day. I go to work alone in a truck and fix things for people I don't know and may never see again. I ate lunch alone every day unless I had a job nearby so I could come home and have lunch with you. I came home and spent all my time with the wife I loved, the daughter I adored, and the best friend who knew me best. Then, with one sentence, 2 of the 3 people I loved and trusted destroyed almost everything I knew. They did it together and they did it on purpose. Henry, we didn't want this to happen, but you didn't stop it. You decided to grab the copper pipes and to hell with the consequences. Do you realize how long it took me to even think about trusting a woman again? But even that wasn't enough for you, was it? Was it not enough that I lost my wife and my best friend to each other? No, you should have taken my daughter too. Juliana made this choice herself. Nonsense. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't influence her to stay with you. I raised my voice. Oh, honey, I know it'll be weird having Tom here instead of Dad, but at least you'll still see me when you come home from school. I promise you'll be able to see your dad so often. How can we arrange it? Tell me, nothing like this ever happened. She couldn't, and she knew it. I continued, no, you just had to have it all. Your selfish, greedy self just had to have it all with the man you really wanted. Why did your life have to change right then? Of course, You just ruined a man who has loved and supported you for the past 16 years. But who cares about him, as long as you get what you want? Have you ever thought about telling your daughter that this will be very difficult for her father? At least I will have this, so I think you should live with your father so he won't be alone, and we'll see each other when we can. I already know the answer. Not once. You're right, Henry. I guess I didn't think about such things. But still, you disappeared without a word. What the hell did you think I was going to do, Jennifer? I had no one. My whole family was taken away, and my daughter went along with it. What could I do? Stay home alone 12 days out of every 14, knowing that my life was going on without me, right across the street? My wife and my daughter are in my house, only my wife is now sleeping with my best friend instead of me. Bumping into each other on the street, so I can see everything I've lost? Will I stay there and experience this every day for the rest of my life, only to spend a few days a month with a child who rejected me? In my opinion, I had exactly two choices: cut all ties and leave or shoot myself. I hesitated between these options, even when I left. When I told Mrs. Bree's parents that I would see you in hell, it was because I expected to be there soon. I even had a gun. God, Henry, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You were too busy moving on with your life without a care in the world to worry about me. You replaced me with the man you wanted and convinced your daughter to stay with you. You had everything you wanted, and you didn't care about me. I even told you after the hearing that I would leave the house. I didn't mean leaving the area, I meant that I would die. After that, I expressed my concern or even asked what I meant, but no. I finally realized that I wouldn't give you that pleasure. I didn't kill myself because I realized that I hated you enough to stay alive. Henry, Unfortunately, I continued ignoring her attempt to speak. I allowed my hatred and anger to cloud my thinking towards Juliana. When she decided to live with you, I thought she had chosen you and wanted Tom to become her father instead of me. So I went too far and left without a word. I wish I could put the blame entirely on you for this, but I will take most of the responsibility. It cost me 8 years of her life that I will never get back. Thank God there was finally someone who loved me enough to think about my interests, even perhaps at the expense of his own. But you don't know anything about this, about putting someone else first. Who knows how many more years I would have missed without Kelly pulling me out of my rut. I'm going to show her for the rest of my life how much I appreciate it. Now do you understand why I continue to hate you? I think I understand, Henry. I was hoping that time would change things, but it didn't. All I can say is that I'm sorry for the way we acted. Maybe in a while, but I won't bother you again. Can we at least agree to be polite? Of course. We still have a daughter together, and although I will try to avoid you, I understand that this will not always be possible. On those occasions when we need to be in the same place, I will be able to treat you at least like a stranger on the street. Just make sure your husband never addresses me again. Over the next 2 years, I gradually bought out my boss's share as he prepared to retire. I became the largest electrical contractor in Marble Falls and one of the largest in Central Texas. I was still on call a couple of days a week, but mostly ran the business from an office where my beautiful wife and now 10-year-old daughter took orders. I was in charge of personnel and projects, and together we did the accounting. Megan was an absolute treasure and adored her new little sister, Katie. As luck would have it, a year after the wedding, Benjamin was offered a promotion in the Dallas office. It's still about a 4-hour drive from us, but we see them about once a month on the weekends. They seem very happy and are expecting my first grandchild next year. I wish I could say that something terrible happened to Tom and Jenny other than their significant weight gain, but that didn't happen. Although I'm not interested in hearing about them, Juliana keeps Kelly updated on their lives, and Kelly occasionally mentions things to me. Kelly doesn't hate them like I do, why should she? In fact, she's grateful for what they did because it brought us together. She sends them a thank you card every year on our wedding anniversary.